Welcome. ABC is proud to present retirement planning with Trutina Financial. Ryan Colkitt and Clayton Hunter are joining us today to present on this important topic.
Well, thank you all for joining, everyone that did join and everyone that's going to watch this in the future. My name is Clayton Hunter. I'm here from Trutina Financial, and I'm with my colleague, Ryan Colkitt. We currently sit on the Professional Development Council for the ABC. We've been working with the ABC for years through our company. Here, we're just going to present kind of the basics for you as you approach retirement, what to look forward to, what to plan for. In my day-to-day job, I'm a financial advisor at Trutina Financial. I sit down and meet with individuals and help them through all aspects of their life. Ryan works on the opposite side of our business, and maybe you can give a little intro to yourself, buddy.
Yeah, so Ryan Colkitt, I work here at Trutina as an investment analyst, and more specifically on the 401k retirement side of our business. So in this presentation, I'm going to focus in on a few of the aspects around retirement account planning and income planning. Clayton will take some of the other topics around Social Security and Medicare. And kick us off, Clayton.
So as you approach retirement, chalk it up to four main concerns. These are going to be very general topics, but something that I think everyone should have on their mind as they get maybe within 5 years of retirement. You want to start planning around these before the day that you retire so that you're ready to make that transition as smoothly as possible into retirement. The first of the main concerns is going to be health insurance. What does that look like? For a lot of people, it's going to be Medicare. If you retire earlier, there are some other options available as well. We'll switch things over to Ryan after that. He's going to talk on the 401k and other retirement assets, as well as income planning. And then at the very end, we're going to talk about Social Security. So here's just a general timeline of all the key ages prior to, during, and I guess after retirement. 59 and a half is going to be the first key age for you. The first time that you can take a penalty-free withdrawal from a retirement account, so 401k or an IRA. There are exceptions to taking a withdrawal beforehand, such as a hardship. However, most cases, 59 and a half is going to be that first age that you have access to the funds. 62 is going to be the next key date for you, and that's the earliest date that you can turn on Social Security. Again, there are going to be exceptions to this as well. Widower benefits, disability benefits, etc. But for the purposes of our presentation, 62 is going to be that first age that you're going to worry about. And Social Security is a window. It spans all the way to 70. We'll talk about that a little later in the presentation, but you have options on when to turn on Social Security within that window. 65 is going to be Medicare age. We'll discuss that as well. 67 right now is the full retirement age for Social Security, and that's what your benefit's going to be based upon. Prior to 67, there's penalties and reductions in your benefits, and past 67, you actually get a roll-up in the benefit from Social Security. 70 is that maximum age to turn on Social Security. You're not going to get any benefit waiting past 70 currently. And our current RMD age is 73. An RMD is a required minimum distribution. It is an amount that you are required to take out of your retirement accounts each year. We'll jump right into health insurance. Three main points in the health insurance are going to be Medicare, private insurance, and then COBRA. So Medicare is the main insurance for you. As I said earlier, 65, you're able to turn it on. The basics are it's government provided health insurance for you. There are different parts to Medicare. It can get pretty confusing. And again, this is why you like to plan prior to retirement, prior to age 65, so that when you hit that marker and you're in the window to actually apply for Medicare, you know what you're doing. There's Part A, which is hospital stays. Took this directly from the Medicare website, so you can see the premium. Most people are going to pay $0 for the premium on this. There's a deductible, as with most insurance, and then at the very bottom, it's going to give you the general amount of time that you have inside of the hospital before you start paying. How much is Medicare going to pay for? How much are you going to split? Part B is what you're probably thinking of when you think of health insurance. This is the main doctor stays, your regular checkups, just the little things that might be going wrong. And as you get older, more and more things kind of start to fail. You might be visiting the doctor a little more often. The premium for this is around $165 each month. One of the benefits to Medicare is it's great coverage for a pretty affordable price. We'll talk about private insurance here in a moment, but that is generally a lot more expensive than Medicare. Part B is for drugs. That's an easy one to remember. Prescription medicine. Again, you're going to be paying a premium for this as well. And as you get older, there's going to be a little more that you're going to need. So how do you qualify for Medicare? First step, you got to be 65 years old. It's pretty easy there. You'll know when you're Medicare age. It's case specific, but you can qualify earlier with disability, and that you can go onto the Medicare website and find out if you're an early qualifier. And the other big one here is you have to be paying Medicare taxes. They break it up into quarters, as the Social Security system does as well. But in general, you got to pay for about 10 years, and they do not need to be consecutive years. You just need to pay in for 10 years. So you might have a question where maybe you want to retire before 65. Your health insurance from work is going to end, and you're actually going to have to bridge between your work insurance and Medicare. This is where you're going to have actually two options. There's private insurance, and then there's COBRA. So private insurance is you'll just go out and you'll source your own insurance. Your budget for that is roughly $1,000 per person per month. So remember, Medicare was less than $200 a month. And now if you're on private insurance, it's about $1,000. So when you get to 65, the cheaper option is to turn on Medicare and get rid of the private insurance. You can double up. You can have Medicare supplements, which are a whole different conversation. But for the purposes of this, we'll just assume maybe you need to bridge the retirement to Medicare gap. You can budget $1,000 a month. COBRA is another option you'll likely have access to. And COBRA is just a continuation of the health insurance that you have through your work. How would you qualify for COBRA? Well, first you have to have the insurance through a previous employer, your most recent employer. And then when you leave, you have the option for 18 months of coverage after your date of termination. There are a couple requirements. You need to be 20 plus employees, and COBRA is actually not available if the employer terminates the group benefit, which means if the employer has to get rid of their health benefits and then you leave, you're not going to be able to use their health benefits anymore. COBRA is a little more expensive of an option. So often when we're getting health benefits from our work, your company is paying for a portion of the benefits. They'll actually stop doing that, and you'll be on the hook for the whole cost. So COBRA does tend to be a little more expensive than what you were paying when you were employed at the company. You want to take this one over, Ryan?
Okay, so starting out talking about retirement accounts. So typically when you're getting close to retirement, you're starting to think about a few things, really some options, and kind of how are you going to handle the assets that you've accumulated through your working career. Oftentimes that's a 401k, but generally what we're going to talk about today is going to apply to retirement accounts in general. So if maybe you have a 403b or a different type of employer-sponsored retirement account, there are some nuances to consider, but for the most part, the conversation is going to apply across the board to those other accounts as well. So we're going to talk options there. We're going to talk about how to take withdrawals, what type of taxes apply, and then just a brief note on required minimum distributions as well. So jumping forward here, and again, this is when you're getting closer, as Clayton mentioned, to that point of retirement. You're kind of considering, okay, at some point in the future, or maybe even now, I'm no longer going to be employed. So what am I going to do with that, big lump sum of dollars in my 401k or in my retirement account? And there's really a couple options for you. And the first one is just to keep those funds within your employer-sponsored retirement plan, or leave the money inside your 401k. As long as you have a balance of at least $5,000 in your plan, you are able to continue to use the benefit of the employer-sponsored retirement account. Now I think that is going to jump up to $7,000 next year. But the threshold's relatively low in terms of being able to continue to use the benefit, keep the money in the plan, stay invested in the funds that are available to you through the 401k. You do kind of lose a couple benefits and some flexibility as well when you do that, though. So the first one is just all of the accumulation features of a 401k plan go away. So you're no longer employed. You can no longer make payroll deducted contributions to a plan, and then you would also lose any employer sponsored match, or really any employer sponsored contribution at all. So all those things go away. You can no longer take out a loan from your plan. Again, anything that needs to be funded through payroll is going to go away, obviously, because you're no longer working for the company, no longer on the payroll. This next point here is, I think, a little bit sneakier or less known, and that is oftentimes there's just less flexibility on what types of distributions you can take from a 401k plan as opposed to an individual retirement account or an IRA. For example, many retirement plans, 401ks, will only allow you to take what they call like a total distribution, or if you take a single dollar out of your account, you have to take your entire account balance. That can create pretty significant challenges for someone that's wanting to use the 401k as their post-retirement vehicle, because they will, ultimately have to withdraw the entire account whenever they need their first dollar. It just isn't very tax efficient and doesn't make a ton of sense. So I put in parentheses at the end of this one, plan dependent. This really is and will vary significantly from plan to plan. So if you are considering using your 401k as your post-retirement vehicle, you'll want to take a look at your plan options and just understand what types of distributions are available to you. Okay, so the next option, and I think probably the more common option here, is rolling funds over into an IRA or an individual retirement account post your retirement. So an IRA, if you're not familiar, is basically just a retirement account that has very similar tax benefits to a 401k or employer-sponsored account, but it is not attached to any business or entity. It's simply attached to the individual, hence the name. And you can make a transfer from the 401k over to an IRA. There are typically no tax consequences associated with that type of transfer, and then you can continue your retirement journey just using the IRA as your vehicle, as opposed to the 401k or other employer-sponsored plan. A couple things to consider when you're making that, or kind of hiccups that I think people can run into. The first one is that you become responsible for your investment allocation. So oftentimes in your 401k, you're going to be using some type of guided vehicle. Certainly not all the time. But there's going to be maybe a target date fund that you've been investing in. Maybe your plan has model portfolios where there are kind of custom built allocations that you can select from, sort of guide rails, if you will, or guardrails rather, that can be used to help you get to an allocation close to what you're looking for, that can get you to your long-term goals. When you roll your money over into an IRA, that all goes out the window, and you become responsible for creating your own investment allocation. And really the world of investments becomes open to you, right? You can invest in individual stocks, individual bonds, exchange traded real estate, basically anything that your heart desires. At the end of the day, you can invest into inside of an IRA. So that can be a plus if you're a more savvy investor who kind of knows what you're looking for and knows how to construct your portfolio. But on the flip side, if you're used to having the guardrails of your employer-sponsored plan, that may present a challenge when you're trying to, kind of overcome the learning curve of figuring out how to allocate your own funds. And this last bullet point, I think, kind of goes hand in hand with what I was just talking through. But typically, again, when you're moving a 401k to an IRA, there's going to be a liquidation there, meaning whatever investments you had in the 401k are going to be sold, and then cash is going to be transferred to the IRA. So there's no option to just kind of, quote unquote, stay the course with your investment allocation. You're going to be forced into kind of becoming responsible for your own investment allocation, reallocating those funds. Jumping forward here and talking a little bit about withdrawals and taxes, a few different types of retirement accounts, and then just a quick note on RMDs. So starting out with withdrawals and taxes, and kind of more so even on the tax side on this first bullet point, but there are a couple different types of retirement accounts, and this can be either a 401k, so there, you have a traditional or pre-tax 401k, you have a Roth 401k, and the exact same titling on the IRA or individual retirement account side. You can have a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, and those would roll into each other. If you're rolling out of a traditional 401k, you'd likely be rolling into a traditional IRA, and so forth. So understanding that the difference in taxes, when you're talking about traditional funds, you were getting a tax deduction along the way. So every time you made a contribution to your 401k, that was a traditional or pre-tax contribution, you were taking a tax deduction. And that means when you're taking a withdrawal in retirement, that those monies are going to be taxable to you at your kind of marginal income tax bracket. So that's really important to know, that when you take a withdrawal in retirement, you are going to owe taxes, because you're going to need to put that in your budget and just have a reasonable sense for what you're going to be paying, what your net income amount is going to be from any traditional or pre-tax retirement withdrawals. Roth, I'll just speak to briefly, because I think it's quite a bit less common, but it's becoming more and more popular. Roth kind of flips the script from a taxation perspective. When you make Roth contributions to a retirement plan, you do not get any immediate tax break. So you're paying taxes as you go. But when you go to take a withdrawal from a Roth IRA or Roth 401k in retirement, that withdrawal is tax-free. So really the difference there is when you're paying the taxes. With traditional, you're paying taxes in retirement. With Roth, you're paying taxes along the way. And when you take a withdrawal from a traditional account, it is going to be taxed, again, at your current marginal income tax rate. So you can look that up. The biggest factor there will be, whether or not you're married or divorced, and then just your total household income to determine roughly what you're going to be paying on a traditional or pre-tax withdrawal. I think another pretty common kind of blunder when you're trying to figure out how much am I going to be paying on my retirement or 401k withdrawals in retirement is you're most likely to have less income or less taxable income, at least in retirement, because you're no longer going to be employed, right? So if you're 5 years out from retirement and you're trying to project, how much withdrawal am I going to need from my account to fund my lifestyle? Well, you got to kind of think about what is your income actually going to look like and what's going to change when you're no longer receiving income from your employer. Last bullet point here, just a sort of a formula to try to figure out kind of where you're working to. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a couple slides here. But basically, if you start backwards with your retirement income, And then these are kind of the factors that help you get there. Clayton's going to talk us through Social Security and the options there here in a moment. Then you have, any pension or kind of guaranteed income sources. These are definitely becoming less and less common. So very few people have any type of pension income that's going to be paid to them in retirement. So if you do, awesome. Again, most people won't, but then you'll have just from there, your retirement account and any savings accounts you may have outside of that, taking withdrawals to fund your lifestyle. So if you start from the back and then you understand your Social Security, you can kind of work into what type of withdrawal level you're going to need to fund your lifestyle. The last one here is RMD, or required minimum distribution. This is just a government required minimum distribution that you must take from your pre-tax retirement account starting at age 73. The whole idea here is you put this money in tax deferred. The government wants to get their tax dollars at some point, so they start forcing you to take withdrawals. For the most part, this isn't really a huge issue because people are using that money to fund their lifestyle anyway. And any withdrawals that you take, to create income for yourself in retirement would count towards your required minimum distribution. But just something to be aware of as you get, closer to that age, and ensure that you're taking the required minimum distribution so you're not penalized. Okay, jumping forward here, talking a little bit about income planning. So we kind of looked at that formula just briefly there. I want to dig into kind of the mindset shift that happens from an income planning perspective when you're accumulating assets versus when you're spending assets, and talk a little bit about building your income plan as you're approaching retirement. So I think that, ultimately the biggest mental hurdle as people are getting closer to retirement is just feeling comfortable, right? Do I have enough money each month to cover my expenses, to live the lifestyle I want to live? And getting comfortable there really means kind of digging into this income plan and making sure that the lifestyle that you're hoping to live can be met with your income and assets. So starting out here on accumulation versus spending, the first thing is really just a switch in mentality, right? A switch in the approach in which you are, going from saving to spending. The entire retirement game kind of turns on its head when you hit that kind of binary switch and say, okay, I'm retired. And you move from the idea of I'm saving into my 401k. Maybe I'm saving outside of my retirement plan as well, with this idea that at some point in the future, those funds are going to have to start producing income for me to live without working for your employer. So you move from accumulation to spending, and what comes along with that. And the first part is just understanding the differences and kind of the dynamic nature of your investment portfolio and how you may want to make adjustments in that portfolio to produce income, as opposed to just trying to grow that account balance over time to have the largest nest egg you can as you get to retirement. And ideally, this is more of a process that occurs over, as Clayton mentioned, maybe you're 5-7 years out from retirement. You start thinking about this portfolio construction process then, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to retire in a few weeks and I want to make some adjustments to my portfolio. Obviously, never too late, but if you start making smaller adjustments over time, then you'll have ultimately less risk to your retirement as you get nearer to your retirement age. So typically, in terms of portfolio adjustments that are occurring at this stage, you're talking about decreasing your total portfolio risk. Often that looks like increasing your allocation to income producing investments. So potentially increasing a fixed income or bond allocation, potentially shifting a stock allocation toward higher income or dividend producing stocks. There's a lot of different ways to approach how to shift your portfolio, but the primary key on this front is to understand what your downside risk is, meaning if the market goes through a cycle and has a big drawdown, how is your portfolio going to react in that type of environment? So sort of doing a stress test on your portfolio, because really the primary risk to your retirement when you're talking about an investment portfolio is a situation where very near or early in your retirement, you experience a large drawdown, and you're also taking withdrawals from your account, and then that kind of compounds on itself, and all of a sudden you're in a situation where your assets can't support your lifestyle. That's why the last bullet point here is typically, if you can avoid taking large withdrawals and take kind of a smaller systematic distribution, maybe it's monthly. I think a lot of people think about retirement income on a monthly perspective. Maybe it's quarterly. Just set up some sort of cadence so that you're not in a situation where you're trying to take out, 2 years worth of spending at one time, where you can potentially put yourself in a challenging situation if that timing doesn't quite work out from a market return perspective. And the last bullet point on this slide is kind of determining what your healthy withdrawal rate looks like. So a lot of times you're going to be trying to work into a certain dollar figure, just because I think it's a little bit easier to think about, how many dollars do I need? But then comparing how many dollars do I need to what's my asset level, and does my asset level support that level of withdrawal? So frequently when we're talking about kind of rule of thumb, we're talking, I'd say 4% is probably your most common rule of thumb from a retirement distribution perspective. And just to give you a quick example, so that means, say you had $200,000 in a 401k account, that would just mean taking 4% of that, or $8,000 per year in income in retirement, and feeling like that was going to be sustainable on a year-over-year basis through your retirement. So there's a lot of different factors that can impact what that healthy withdrawal rate would look like for you. There's certainly not a one-size-fits-all here. So I'd say the rule of thumb might be a good place to start. But in terms of what you want to consider to hone that in, I'd say the primary one really is, how long do you expect to live in retirement? I know that can be a very challenging question to answer, but I'd say kind of where to start, right? How old are you when you're retiring? And you can kind of work into roughly how long you're expecting your retirement to be. And it's always better to be conservative, right? Meaning expect to live longer, so that your assets will support you for your entire life. But the longer your retirement, then potentially the lower your withdrawal rate should be, whereas the shorter your retirement, then the larger withdrawals your account could support to see you through your retirement. And the other ones are a little more challenging, but things like understanding your total portfolio allocation and what type of return you're going to expect over your retirement would be probably the second largest factor there. Okay, so I think jumping forward here, and my last slide, I believe, before I kick it back to Clayton to wrap us up here with Social Security. But I just kind of wanted to bring this all together, talking about building your income plan. I think if you work through these steps, you put yourself in a pretty good situation to understand what type of income you're going to have in retirement, and really what type of income you're going to need in retirement. And then, is there a mismatch, right? If there's a mismatch, then maybe you need to, alter your savings plan, consider looking at your retirement date. Does that still make sense? But if there's congruency, or, ultimately, if your income matches your lifestyle and you're comfortable with that level of withdrawals, then, that you're ready to pull the trigger from a retirement perspective. The first one is just building a budget, right? I think this can be pretty eye-opening for a lot of people as they get closer to retirement, because they're used to earning a wage from their employer, and they don't maybe consider that they're paying things like payroll taxes. They're contributing to a retirement plan. So, maybe they're used to earning a salary of X, but they don't realize that, after they pay payroll taxes, after they contribute to their retirement plan, maybe they're saving outside of the retirement plan as well, that they're only spending, 50, 60% of that total earned wage. So you have to take those things into account when you're building your budget. And for most people, they end up needing far less than their current earned wage from their employer. But again, that will vary just depending on the lifestyle that people are looking to live in retirement. The next one here is understanding your Social Security timeline and then any other guaranteed income stream. So for most people, this is just going to be Social Security. What age are you looking to retire? And then are you going to start drawing Social Security immediately? Are you going to defer Social Security? There's a lot of consideration there. Clayton will talk us through a little bit about some of the pros and cons of either one on that front. But just having a sense for when that income stream is going to start and how much you're going to need to supplement it with retirement account withdrawals. So the next one here, understanding the tax implications on account withdrawals. So we kind of talked through the two different types of accounts and the tax implications of making withdrawals. You want to understand, given your account situation, how that's going to play out. So you know the net distribution you're going to get when taking withdrawals from the accounts. And the next one here is just creating a distribution plan. So I'd say by far the most common that I've seen here is some type of monthly draw. I think most expenses occur monthly, or at least many of them. And so there's some type of match that happens in the brain there that I think just makes that most comfortable. But it doesn't have to be. There's certainly no one size fits all there either. I think just having a plan for taking distributions, understanding what your expenses are, makes the most sense there. And the last point here is just to kind of revisit this over time, right? As you get into retirement, you may find, maybe you're overdrawing. You don't need this much funds from your 401k or IRA. Maybe you find that you have more free time and you're doing more things and you need a bit more to sustain the lifestyle that you're hoping to lead. Just to revisit that, make sure it still makes sense. And then most importantly, just to make sure that it's still sustainable. Right? Is that plan going to see you through retirement? It's much better to make a mid-retirement adjustment early on when you can still get back to a path of sustainability, as opposed to kind of staying on a path for a more extended period where maybe it becomes a situation where it's no longer recoverable. So that's pretty much what I got on income planning and retirement accounts. And I think getting into Social Security here will kind of wrap us up and give us a holistic view. So I'm going to pass it back to Clayton here, and he's going to take us through the Social Security aspect.
Social Security is essentially going to be your government-funded income in retirement. It's a very, very, I'm going to just say complicated system. It's very individualized. It's very specific to how much you've paid in. Part of it is how long you've paid into it. So my goal here is to really just take this from a high level, talk about the key ages again, talk about the benefit to waiting, talk about the drawbacks to waiting. Same thing with starting early. We'll talk about taxes very, very basically. Again, that's going to vary entirely based on your own situation. And then I think probably the most useful part is, what can you do now? How can you get that next step into just the insight into the future? So simply put, qualifying for Social Security, you need to pay Social Security taxes for 10 years. What that actually looks like under the hood is just usually you need 40 credits, Social Security credits. You can get 4 a year, and a credit is just based on this year's $1,640 worth of earnings. So simply put, 10 years paying Social Security taxes. For the purposes of this, I think that'll be the easiest way to remember it. So here we'll touch on the key ages again. 62, just given normal circumstances, 62 is going to be the earliest that you can receive your benefit. 67 is that full retirement age. So this is the benchmark that deductions are based on, and the increases are also based on. And then 70 is going to be that max benefit. You have no benefit to waiting beyond 70 to turn on Social Security, at least not now. So we'll start at 67. If you decide you're going to take benefits earlier, you're going to be assessed essentially a penalty they're going to reduce your benefit. And what that really means is they're going to be paying you longer. So they're going to pay you less of a monthly income. If you wait, they're actually going to give you 8% a year after 67 on your monthly benefit. And this is their way of hoping that they actually don't have to pay you out for as long as they might save money in the long run. So you're probably curious, what is the best age to do it? When should you turn on Social Security? And that is whenever it's best for you. And that might sound like a horrible answer, but if you know you can survive on a benefit, and you know if you do your planning, you've planned out your income, your expenses, and you know that you can survive on a certain benefit, then it might be the right time to turn on Social Security. A lot of life expectancy comes into play here. So if you know that genetically, maybe your parents lived to be 105 or 110 each, and you've got healthy lifestyle and long living, it might make sense to wait it out so you get the maximum benefit. If the opposite is true, then maybe you think you want to turn it on sooner so that you can start collecting benefits and try and collect as much as you can while you're living. Other reductions can still occur. So the biggest one that I'm thinking of here is if you're still working and you turn on Social Security, they have the right to reduce your benefit. So in most cases, and I say most cases, it doesn't make sense to turn on Social Security while you're working. But again, this is so case specific, just trying to fly over at a high level. From the tax perspective, here's the very high level. It's taxed to you as income. It's taxed to you like your paycheck is taxed to you. It's not a capital gain. There isn't that sort of special treatment. To you, it is just income. Under the hood of that, you're going to be paying about 85%. You're going to be paying taxes on about 85% of your Social Security. There's a chance that you'll pay less if your income is lower. So here I've actually included I think this is actually from the IRS website, the brackets in which you would pay a 50% on 50% of your benefits, which would be between 25,000 and 34,000 if you're an individual. For a joint return, 32,000 to 44,000, and that's just your qualified income as a household. Essentially, anything above those two numbers, you'll be paying up to 85% of your benefits. And the most important part, what to do now. The Social Security website, as complicated as the system itself is, the website is incredibly useful. You can log in at any time. And you can really just Google a Social Security website, go in, create your account. And especially as you get closer to retirement, I think the most useful thing they have is they'll estimate your benefit and then show you how much your monthly income will be each year from 62 to 70. This will help you immensely. Just plan your income for retirement. If you look at this at least once a year as you get closer and closer to retiring, you're going to have a much better idea of how much you can expect to get from Social Security. You'll be able to plan on if you could take it now, should you take it now, or should you wait? And again, there are so many different avenues and alleys you can go down. There's spousal benefits, there's widower benefits. But again, from the high level, I think the easiest and best thing you can do is just log into the website, create the account, and get a better idea of your benefits. That is all that I had on Social Security. Here's our contact info. If you have any questions, we can try and get a little more specific in email because, again, everything from Medicare to income planning to Social Security planning is indeed very specific. You can email us, you can call us. We're happy to help. Thank you for listening.